Hi, I'm Dave Elsey, aka Mischief, and this is the Conspiracy Cupboard. And today we're going to be looking into ancient mysteries. In fact, well, it's going to be a theme that we're going to be doing for quite a while, actually, because there's a lot of ancient mysteries to look into. So let's get started, shall we? Title sequence. There we go. Right then, so today is going to be a little piece for you to go and follow a few people. So I'm not trying to promote myself here. Basically, I want you to go and have a look at Uncharted X, which is Ben Van Kerkwick. I think I got his name right. He's been on the Joe Rogan Experience, so if you've seen that. His videos are unbelievable. So he's been out to sites in Egypt, other places over the world, looking through quarries, looking through places like Aswan and the place on the island I can't remember the name of, where there is a big granite box that's been cut, which is actually meant to be upright, so it's not one of the sarcophagi that they reckon were made. And it basically shows different machining techniques for each piece of these granite blocks and other works there. So my point to this is linking in, obviously, with all the ancient apocalypse stuff of Graham Hancock, of Randall Carlson's work on the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, on the work of people like Ben and of the guy from Bright Insight, Jimmy Corsetti, there we go, at Bright Insight on Instagram and YouTube. I'm going to link both of them below, because I want you to go and check out their videos. So, like I said, Ben, he's got the videos detailing all the different machining works and processes and things that he's found in the quarries from being over in Egypt and looking through those, and bits on like high technology. So the kind of things that we are thinking about as a civilization that was previous to ourselves, an earlier form of man that was documented all across the world. I mean, in every single civilization that we look at, I've mentioned this in other videos, we see patterns and recognition giving credit to an earlier people, or a god type people, or people that were more advanced. I mean, if I went into the middle of the jungle right now and found a village there that had never seen, anybody else, I turn up with a phone and a lighter and some other little bits, you know what I mean, and a drill and, saws and machines. I'm a god instantly, and they would see it that way, and that's how they would depict it. And that is reflected in, ancient mythologies and ancient depictions of godlike people, or, ancient technologies, and trying to replicate ancient things that they've seen, or ancient faces, or ancient depictions of stuff that they have been told about, or what they had physically seen, like I said before. So in Egypt, we've got perfect examples of this. And if you watch Ben's videos, it shows different machining marks and different basic stages of technology. But what they give to the Fourth Dynasty as the latest sort of technology, where the pillars were created out of the large blocks of granite, just couldn't have been done with the technology they give them. They grant them pounding stones and basically copper hand axes, and maybe some possible saws that we use with sand to go across the surfaces. But none of these have actually been taken to the point of making something like an obelisk, or a large granite block, or one of these huge obelisks that's been carved out in one of the quarries, which in one of the videos where you see the scoop marks on the actual granite block going down into the surface, and then holes, perfectly square holes dug straight deep down into the ground through pure blocks of granite. You're telling me someone's done that with a pounding stone? There's no room to work. You can't get a hand axe down there. It's got to have been some other kind of technology. Personally, I'm looking into some kind of maybe sound wave technology, or something to be able to change the molecular structure of the stone, or to make it softer to scoop out. Seems to be the only obvious way I can't see a machine making that kind of mark, but it's still yet to be decided what actually did these marks down the trenches and all over the sites. I believe there's actually stone scoop marks on some of the stones down at Stonehenge, which is one of the places where, me being in England, I would really love to go and check out. There's also some small henges up in Yorkshire and dotted around the place in Derbyshire, which I'm hopefully going to check. And what I'm going to be looking for is any of these scoop marks or machining marks on some of the stones to try and determine if it was a civilization that was across the world, basically. In my mind, it must have been. So we talk about Atlantis, and I'm going to get to that in a minute with Jimmy Corsetti, because he's got some great videos on his theories about Atlantis, which you should check out on Bright Insight there. Just going back to Uncharted X with Ben, and that kind of frame of reference. So the machining and things, it must have been on some kind of scale where they could be produced or, you know, used worldwide, or at least in the areas that they habited in the time of the Ice Age. Now, it's proven that the Earth is generally colder than it is hotter. It spends a lot more time in ice ages than it does in warm periods. I mean, we had a mini ice age, I think it was about 100 years ago or so, or earlier. I know during the Middle Ages, where we get the Dark Ages from, that was a mini ice age. And it's called the Dark Ages basically because of that. This is where Game of Thrones got his idea from, you know, to put in the books. So this is what we're going to be exploring with the channel. Like I said, we do have some episodes coming up where we're going to be filming in local place in Bonsall, Derbyshire, doing sort of UFO investigations and stuff. Obviously, we are the conspiracy cover, so we're going to be covering a lot of topics. But I want to try and do some investigating and backing up these guys who are doing some really great work over in America at the moment, and obviously over in Egypt. They've got a bit more money than myself to be able to fly out there and everything. So, unfortunately, we won't be getting any videos from myself of Egypt anytime soon. But what I'm hopefully going to try and do is see if we can link up some bits over here. So if I can get a trip down to Stonehenge at some point, that would be absolutely amazing. And see if I can find any of these marks or machining marks on the blocks of stone there. Because I do know they were quarried and brought over. So if there's any other henges that are near myself, I can go and check those out and try and back up Ben's bits for machining on there. I know of a guy he had a podcast with. Top of my head, I can't remember his name. He's based in the UK, and this is where he's basically said that he's seen these machining marks or some kind of scoop marks on some of the stones at Stonehenge. So it'd be interesting to see if the other henges link up. I mean, some of them are smaller, so they were just quarried and taken from blocks of stone. So yeah, you can split stone with wood and things like that by making dents in the wood and in the stone, going along to form little indents, and then pounding pieces of wood in there, expanding them with water, so it eventually creates a crack along the seam line, and poof, you've got a piece of granite or you've got a piece of stone. It's known that this technology was used, but they grant this technology for every single piece of bloody ancient stonework we see. And I mean, you've got places, you know, in Peru and across the world where they've got large and small stone blocks perfectly fitting together seamlessly, just going across to build a wall. Well, why not just build it in normal straight blocks? Well, obviously they had this other way of working, so this is how it works, and it's stood for hundreds of thousands of years. So, you know, it's got to be a better way of building on it. And obviously the technologies for quarrying and mining these stones, especially seen in Egypt, I mean, it's just so ridiculous to me that Ben, in one of Ben's videos, he goes into a room before going into the quarry. I think it's at Aswan, where basically he gets to watch a video. Everyone has to watch a video while they're there, basically telling them of how they use the pumice stones to grind down the thing, and then they use these and then split this stuff, and this is how it was, and it's done by Zawiya Was. obviously, telling you this is, yeah, they built everything like this, just stones all day. That's what they did. They loved it. It was, oh, brilliant. I'll tell you what, if we could go back to ancient Egypt and I gave you a stone, you'd be like, oh, dude, oh, you know, how did you know? And you just start. Everyone did it. They had massive forearms. So, some of this, obviously, you know, the stones might have been used for that. Personally, I think that these stones that have been found, the black stones that are there, were more for moving these great pieces of stone once they've been snapped off. I mean, you think you get a couple of 100,000 of those underneath, and yeah, some of them are going to be crushed, but it's going to be a lot easier to bloody roll this massive obelisk out, or get a crane underneath it, or whatever technology it was that was used to move these massive obelisks out, or pieces of granite, or, you know, just the posts to hold up some of the temples that were there with the flowered tubular tops on, which are all perfectly symmetrical. You can't do that unless it's machined. You just cannot do that by hand. Some of the sculptures, I mean, you can see the two different markings on the sculptures. So you've got one that's given to the 4th dynasty, but actually it's done earlier than they gave it credit for. And the only reason they give them credit for this is because of the writings that have been chiseled into the side by a toddler. You know, and Put Dave was here, AD 02, whatever, you know. Tony, here's a smelly. No, I don't eat pineapple. Something, you know. And they go, oh yeah, obviously this guy made it, or it was Ramesses II's, you know, stuff that was made. You can't say that. The machining mark's completely different. These guys have got knees, for God's sake, and, you know, perfectly smooth on the outside, and you can actually see, you know, marks of where their hands would have been, and fingers, and their faces are perfectly symmetrical and carved, and it's just beautiful stonework. The other stuff is, I mean, God, you got to give it credit for what it is, but it's not. It's quite clearly a replica of what these people have found when they've come back. So jumping over to Jimmy Corsetti's bit about Atlantis then, so I can lead into this ancient stuff as well, is his theory on the Richat structure. Now, the Richat structure is a weird thing. It's the Eye of the Sahara, if you've ever heard of that. If you search on Google Earth right now and go and zoom in there and then pull back out, you'll pretty much see a giant eye looking at you like a big dragon's eye. 3-ringed circular structure with a couple of other circles on the outside, which almost perfectly represents the story that Plato gave us from Solon, his ancestor, about Atlantis. Albeit it's a bit bigger than what he would have described, but if you're thinking of a huge city, the placement of it, I mean, you wouldn't have a city out at sea for trading. The waterways that would have come in there are perfect. It faces the south, which is what it did. It's got mountains to the north. It's got rivers running off either side of it, or would have had, coming down there. And then you've got the massive central structure, which is about, I think it is 25 miles across. And then the outer structures completely make up about 30 miles in total. So it's quite a massive structure. So you've got the inner rings, which circle this piece, which I think that the inner total circle is about 20 miles or so. So to walk across it, what you're talking about, 2 hours, you know, something like that. So 2.5 miles, it's 20 kilometers. Sorry, that's it. 2.5 miles from there to the other side of the actual main island in the middle. And you can see structures, if you zoom in, that, you know, there's not many bases of structures that are left, but there's not been many excavation works, as far as I'm aware, on the Richat structure. And to get to the Richat is almost impossible. It's in Mauritania. So you've got to get a Mauritanian visa, then you've got to get a guide, interpreter, and access to the site in the first place. Most people will only fly you over it. They won't actually take you to it. You're not allowed to land on it. So you'd have to get transport through there. There's minefields all around it. I mean, honestly, it's one of the weirdest places on the planet. And again, one of the places, oh, look, we're not allowed to go to. Oh, I wonder why. So rather than me putting all the pieces together for the thing for the Richard structure, I'm going to let Jimmy Cossetti do it better, because he's got a full set of videos on there if you want to go and check that out, and find out some information yourself on the Richard, and just Google Earth it before you even look at anything. It is amazing, and you can see why he thinks, and I mean, I do agree with him. It does look like it, you know, if you go by Plato's description from Solon of where it would have been. You know, it's in Africa, which is perfect. It's not far from the coast. It's got a channel inlet. You know, it's got enough places to have these islands around it, where you can imagine boats would have been coming in and out and going across, and you know, and then you've got this massive sweeping looking disaster coming through from the Sahara, which only about 4,000 years ago or so, BCE, was green. You know, it wasn't a desert. It was marshy and reeds, from what I understand, and quite green. Obviously, the wetland obviously evaporated, which left a load of salt over the Sahara Desert, which I don't know if you know that. So it was obviously flooded at some time by seawater. So there must have been some kind of impact again, which flooded the land and washed it away, which would then give you the perfect story of Atlantis. You know, a disaster came in, the people fled, and, you know, went over to Egypt, or maybe fled from Egypt over that way as well, and ended up in Turkey, which is where you get these places like Derinkuyu and the massive underground vaulted structures that have been dug out, which makes sense if you've fled that way over towards Turkey to get away from, you know, Africa, where this massive devastations happened, and out of Egypt where you were working on, and that's been devastated. You go over to Turkey, and then you build Derinkuyu, you build Göbekli Tepe, you expand from there and then work back out. Why Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried, which it seems to have been, I couldn't give you an answer to. In the book that I'm writing, though, Bridges, I do speculate on that, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a later episode, where I'm going to just go through my book with you. Probably bore you to death, but hopefully you'll like it. So yeah, so anyway, I'm going to try and investigate from here and see if I can find any links to sort of quarrying marks or something that would suggest a global or a at that time a universal sort of used piece of technology or apparatus that was employed. And if there was massive devastation and floods, which we know there were, which goes back to the younger ice impact hypothesis and all the work from the Missoula Plains and all the cataracts and everything out there, and just, you know, the Channel Scablands and all the work by Randall Carlson, it's mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. So that's my little piece on here. I'm going to have some follow-up episodes, obviously, on this, on the Ancient Apocalypse, which I've got a playlist below. My Ancient Mysteries section. And we're going to be looking into and backing up stuff from Uncharted X and Ben, things about the machining. So hopefully I can try and track down some stuff in the UK and see if, if there's any monuments here or any bits here that have got the same machining marks, or you can see it's come from somewhere, or any quarries that we know were taken from, if there is any sort of machining marks from there that might suggest an earlier time had been started, and then obviously later on carried on by druids and whatever else that were mining and taking things out of there for castles and whatever else, or shrines, monuments, and megalithic structures. And then wicked. And obviously I've got the upcoming UFO video. See if we can capture anything. It might be a load of crap, who knows. From what I've research I've gathered so far, it said that one of the pub landlords might have made this up, but there was a lady that actually sold her story for I think it was £20,000 something, And the photos of whatever she captured to the Sun or Daily Mail or something like that, over Bonsall at the time. I do know that the pub landlord was giving tours out to people. Hey, I would, hey, come and have a sleep over here, get a pint in, and a meal, and we'll go and see if we can capture some UFOs. Yeah, totally. Good on him. So, hey, let's see. But yeah, like I said before, if you've got any experiences you want to send in, paranormal, UFO, or just a general topic, or you want to pick up on this. Are you an archaeologist? Do you have a say on this? I mean, I know a lot of Egyptologists just back up completely with the pounding stone idea and nothing else. I mean, but you can't cut a straight edge with a pounding stone, okay? And you can't do it with a chisel like that even. There's no chisel marks on them, and on some of them there's actual clear rotation machining marks. You can't do that with copper. So right, go and check out Uncharted X right now. Subscribe to them. Subscribe to me as well, please. Give this video a like. I know I hate saying this stuff, but it really does help the channel. And hopefully, once we get some of the other videos together and everything, you'll really enjoy what's coming up. So yeah, and go and check out at Bright Insight there as well, and Jimmy Corsetti and his works on the Richard structure, because it really is fascinating stuff. And hey, if there's any place else for Atlantis to be, and I know Atlantis gets sort of brushed off and laughed at, but then again, all ancient myths pretty much get brushed off and laughed at. And when you actually start looking into them, they've got some truth somewhere, So, hey, who knows? We might uncover stuff which will change the world, and hopefully for the better. Once we start realizing that these impacts have happened before and wiped out a civilization which was greater than ourselves, or at the same level as us at least, that would actually knock us into a realization of, hey, we are a special people. We have been like this before. Something from space took us out. Let's work together. Let's stop being dicks. Let's stop being assholes to each other, and actually, help each other, and, stop all this warring. Put our money into protecting the planet, from meteorites, from asteroids, from other impacts, and from global warming and things, obviously, and stuff like that. But when you look into things like that, you realise that ice ages come and go, and it's better to be warm than it is to be cold. That's all I'm going to say on that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little bit into this. I'll have some clips on there for you, obviously about these massive machining marks and just the way that things were built back then, which cannot be explained even today. So anyway, look forward to the video coming up, and yeah, Mischief, Ancient Mysteries, signing out.